It gives me great pleasure to welcome the team from BBB Advisory, Lynn Schwennick, Holly Denkin and Tricia Print, who are very familiar with at least 995 of you. So with that, it's over to you, Team BBB. Welcome.
Thank you very much. It's so great to be here with you today. I really, really appreciate your time. Look, everyone, it's just been such an amazing time, and congratulations to those guys in Victoria for today getting out, and no doubt you're outside having a coffee, sitting down in a coffee shop talking to us. So you may know, some of you know me, Lynn, some of you know Tricia, and some of you know Kylie. We're actually working from Kylie's place today, as you can see from her lovely background. But look, the week after the state's lockdown back in March, we partnered quickly with Auscontact to support your leaders. And many had never ever managed a remote workforce before. So we had the chance to share those skills that we've got in those areas. But also they and their team members and our customers were highly stressed. So when you're stressed, you can't remember lots of things, you need reassurance and you seek structure. So the 1 hour virtual coffee workshops became a real critical opportunity to reconnect, right? To know that what your team were feeling was normal, to learn 1 or 2 short and sharp tools that they could use to manage their remote work from home people and their own situations. And then come back next week to sort of fill up the tank and, sorry, I'm going to send you to the next slide, to fill up the tank and report in. So here's a collection of 20 of the top tips, tools and models we used over those 40 workshops. So grab your coffee, get your pen and paper. You're welcome to take a screenshot of anything that we do and pay close attention to it, because we're going to go really, really fast, right? So number 1 is just for all of us, all of you. It's our very first lesson that we shared with every single person that was on the virtual coffee workshops. So we've shared it time and time and time again. That's one that we keep coming back to. So you guys have got it for number 1. Here you go.
I think we went so fast with all the coffee that we drank over this time. Look, this is the first one that all of you would have been very, very familiar with, that you would often hear on the planes, maybe not in recent times, but this is really about fitting your own oxygen mask first. You know, if there's any parents out there, one of the things that people often tell us is that we need to look after ourselves before we can look after our children. This was absolutely pivotal when it came to leaders within the industry as well. It was so important for them to be able to fit their own oxygen mask first so that they could start to look after their people. They needed to be able to look at what they could seek help with, take control over, get organised and get structured as much as what they could. So fitting their own oxygen mask first was critical, and it's something that was absolutely pivotal to the success of leaders when it first started, but also as we went through this environment as well. The second slide that I'm going to take you through was all about understanding your people. I had an opportunity during lockdown to co-author a book on leadership, and one of the things that really stood out for me was the importance of empathy and understanding, importance of looking after and understanding what your people are going through, how they were managing, how they were coping, what was happening with their life at home. And one of the things that I did was I developed a whole set of questions that leaders could start to ask the staff and the people around them how they were really managing, so that they could get to understand their own people. And not just once at the beginning of lockdown, but ongoing, so that they could continue to check in with their people and make sure they were okay. And the next point I wanted to really make, and also really talk to leaders about, was that they are not counsellors. Okay, many leaders felt that they were always doing counselling because of the amount of emotions that were coming up. And it was really important for leaders to be able to take a step back and make sure that their staff knew exactly what they could do, and really reach out to EAP or Lifeline and really help the staff to be able to help themselves, so that their leaders didn't have to take on that extra pressure within their own, with themselves really. The next slide that we'll get up is all about communication. One of the biggest things that leaders talked to us about was, how do we communicate so much change? How do we actually talk to our staff about what is happening? So I developed a communication model that was a simple 3-step model. The first part is always understand. And this comes back to that empathy and understanding. You know, letting your team know that you understand how they're feeling and reassuring them that they're not alone with what they're going through. And although we were all having this pandemic and dealing with it, we were all experiencing different emotions. So often people become really anxious and irrational thoughts arise. So really making sure that you understand your people and let them know that you understand them was the very first part of the communication framework. The second part of the communication framework was educating the staff, educating them on what you're doing, whether it was managing the crisis, whether it was the responses that you as a leader were dealing with, whether it was bringing them back into the office or keeping them at home or having this hybrid workforce. It was about really educating them clearly, concisely around what it is, the decisions that were being made. And then the final step in the communication framework was really reassuring people, reassuring them that you were on the right track, that you had a plan, that you were confident with the approach that you were dealing with, and that you have this. So this communication model could be used in all aspects of business: understand, educate, and reassure.
Thanks, Trish. All right. So our tip number 5 is all about communication and communicating with your work from home team. Using the various communication channels that are at your disposal for various purposes. So establish with your team what channel you're going to use for what purpose. That is, your team meetings, your one-on-ones, your daily catch-ups, your daily planners. Choose the channels that most suit that and vary it. Once you have that set, stick to it. So in each of these communication forums, focus on 1 to 2 things only. They, you, and everyone else around us are too stressed, too distracted to cope with anything else. Remember that when you're not in the office together every day, you actually miss out on those visual cues that you would normally pick up about your people when you're walking past them throughout the day. So make sure you go beyond the email, go beyond even chat, and get yourself a video application and make sure your camera is on. You need to be able to eyeball your people. Turn it on because this will give you the biggest insight as to their well-being on any particular day. Are they okay that day or are they not? Please.
Fantastic. I'm going to extend on this. So I shared with you the 3-step communication model, and that was really simple for something that was either a couple of points. Tricia then talked about the communicating from home. Now, this is another communication model, and it was designed by journalists around what needs to go into a communication process in order for you to be able to really tell a story. Okay, so there's 6 steps here around what are we talking about? So what are we actually communicating? Why are we communicating this? And the why is absolutely critical. Okay, who is actually going to be affected and actually who made the decision? Okay, then we talk about when. When does this happen? And then the next point around that is where is it going to happen? So whereabouts, office-wise, location, and then how are we going to do it? When you think about the communication model, you need to cover all of these parts in order for the people to really understand that story. So sometimes as leaders, we forget parts of these stories. So this framework was a really simple framework for leaders to be able to start to think at a deeper level, what is the message? Okay, and filling out each of those components so that they could tell a story that made sense and covered all of those steps as well. So that's a framework that you can use as well, but also it was something that really came up time and time again through our workshops.
Yep. Thank you. Okay. So Kylie's talking about decisions, and a lot of the time decisions come side to side with changes. So our tip number 7 is how to be change aware. And this is something that leaders and managers, supervisors alike, often struggle with, particularly when you're in stressed environments. So did you know that we deal with change in very different ways, right? And 2020 has brought about quite a lot of change. I don't know if you've noticed. So when leading people through change, dedicate some time to working out with your team and where your team is actually going to land on this graph. Plan ahead so that you can support each of your team members, no matter where they are on this graph, because they're all going to move through this at very different paces. They get stuck at certain points, and often as leaders we are unaware of how to move them on and move them further through the curve when they get stuck. So it's important that you understand exactly what you need to do and what actions to take when they do get stuck at certain points, because you want to move them on. So you can avoid protracted changes, you can avoid changes that don't run very smoothly, you can even avoid changes where they're poorly implemented and they hit roadblocks by simply using something like this graph and a few communication models and change planners, and that will go a lot smoother for you and more people. Oh, sorry, it's me again. Tip number 8. I really wanted to share with you something around dysfunction with your team. This is a 4-step program that I've been using for many years, and I've actually been a leader and a manager of people for more than 20 years. Yes, I know I started at 4. And when things get really tough for me and my work environment becomes quite overwhelmed, I always go back to my basics. So in this way, if ever I see anything going on with my teams or people around me that is something that's undesirable, inappropriate, or they're just stressed and they really don't know where up is down, etc., I always go back to this basics. So make sure that you start at the beginning. Make sure that you revisit what is expected of them in terms of their performance, their behaviour, and the minimum standards, and do it as a team. Do it as individuals as well, and make sure that you and they are very clear on what that is, and write it down. That's a tip from you.
And you've got the next one.
Oh, I did too. Number 9, structuring time well. I tell you what, this is a golden rule. Structure your time well. So as leaders, most of us really don't like to be micromanaged, and we don't like to micromanage. But I tell you what, right now, this is an environment where a little bit of micromanaging comes with a great bang for buck. Create a structure for your time and don't just rely on taking it day by day, because if you do that with work from home teams, a hybrid mix of teams, whether some are working from home or some are in the office, or it's a mix of both, it's not going to work terribly well because it's new for us, right? Or it's new for most of us. So use a diary and a calendar, it doesn't matter if it's paper or electronic, and break your day up into 3 things. Now, this is actually something I've been doing as a leader for many, many years. I break my day up into 3 areas: AM, noon, and PM. Then clearly define when you're going to check your emails during those times, okay? Then clearly define when you're going to do what activity on what day and when in the day you're going to do that. Yes, it takes a bit of discipline. But if you use a different device for work as you do for home, it's a little bit easier and it gives you that distance from your work and personal life as well. And I tell you what, definitely turn all your notifications off, everything except the chat channels that you have set up between you and your team to communicate throughout the day. They still need to be able to ask you questions to help them through their role every day. So make sure that's the only one you have turned on. Remember, if it's urgent, someone will chat or call you.
Thanks, Trish. This actually follows on from Trish, and this is around prioritisation. So a lot of the time I find that leaders struggle with the amount of things that they've got on their plate. And I've been coaching leaders and executives for over 10 years, and this is the one model that I go to so much. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. Okay, and this is a matrix where you can learn and use to prioritise your tasks on a daily or a weekly basis. Okay, it's broken up into 4 quadrants. The first one is number 1, and that is urgent and important tasks. Okay, these are tasks that need to be done today. These are tasks that you cannot delegate, you have to do them and they have to be done today. The second quadrant is they're important tasks, but they're not urgent, okay? So they can be done in a couple of days or they can be done later on in the next week, okay? The third quadrant is all around delegation. And delegating is an entire new training program in itself, but here is where you're starting to look at how do you delegate to others within your team that are confident and capable to be able to do that role, and also to be able to be empowered. And then the fourth quadrant is all about eliminating. And these are the tasks that leaders just shouldn't be doing, but often find themselves doing. And that could be putting out fires or just unnecessary tasks. So this is a great tool. It's a matrix that can be used so often, okay, to be able to really prioritise what it is that you need to do on a regular basis. And it also allows you to really just get clear in your mind all of the things that you need to do and start to get order, just like what Trish was talking about, getting that order that you need.
And just to support our, our Victorians, there's a company in Melbourne called iGoals, and they have those, they have tear-off sheets for every single day that has this matrix on it that you actually complete. Yeah. And I use it all the time. It's just a brilliant, we all do. It's a brilliant activity.
And this matrix was actually from Stephen Covey. He made it famous, okay? So it's absolutely worth its weight in gold. The second one is GROW, the GROW coaching model. Now, many of you are probably coaching your teams at the moment. Now, I have been coaching leaders to become coaching leaders for many, many years, and I know many leaders that use the GROW model. I actually use a different adaptation of the GROW model. I actually use the ARGO model. So it's still the GROW model, but we actually start with reality first. And the reason I start with reality first is that so often people know what is not working, they know what's going wrong, and they know what they don't want, okay? So often if we start in that reality space, we can actually get clearer on their goal, okay? I often find that many people don't know what their goal is because they actually haven't really articulated what's not working. So the one point I want to make around that is make sure you start in the reality space. But the most important part, it doesn't matter what model you're using, okay? Any coaching model will work, okay? What makes a great coach is you and your ability to continue to help support and develop your staff.
And look, I really want to reinforce that, Argo. We found that time and time again with your leaders that they just didn't grow was actually great. They'd seen it before, but people knew exactly where they were today. They just couldn't enunciate a goal. So reality was a great way to start, and it's working time and time again for your leaders. So do that switch. I really want to share a couple of things with you here. One is that we mentioned it earlier, but people can only cover a couple of things at a time. That's all they can put in their head when they're actually stressed. So 1 to 3 points, preferably 1 or 2 points, is all you need to cover. That's all we covered in our workshops. And in fact, in this one today, you probably only remember 1, 2 or 3 points. That'd be fine. That's all we can really cover at any one time. Body language is important, so turn that camera on. We had many people who didn't have camera capability, video capability. It's critical. You can't actually develop a relationship without that, and you can't observe what's going on. Are your people ready for coaching? Are they organised? Do they have their notes? Are they getting interrupted? Are there distractions? What's their environment like? So it's really important to do that. And I want to talk to you about this one in particular. This is a gem that came from one of our teams that work in an environment, a computer company that's a fruit, not an orange. So they actually had what I call instead of a normal day-to-day real-time call board, they're looking at call avoidance. So looking at how many calls staff are actually not taking, they're flicking on, which is Rona in some of our worlds. What is the total volume they're taking per day? What is the after-school work time? What is the average handle time? And what is their adherence? Because really this call avoidance dashboard is all about understanding our people at home. Is there something that's impacting upon them, that's preventing them from being as productive as they are when they're at home? So checking on the behaviour, checking on people throughout the day, set your expectations up front. Keep in mind that they're using company resources, therefore with the monitoring just like we can when you're sitting side by side. So that's it for me. I think this one's actually yours, Tricia.
It is. So tip number 14 is making the most of your time in the office. So many of us are actually returning back to work some days of the week, some days of the month. Sometimes it's just a part of our team. Sometimes it's all of our team. So you can actually make the most of this and leverage it by preparing your time together. Grab your calendar, map it out for the next 3 months and actually mark the days that you are in the office together. Put all of your communication forums, or most of them, the really important ones that bring the team together and talk about, results and celebrate successes and achievements and what the results are and where you're going and what goals you've got as a team. Make sure they're scheduled on the days that you're in the office. Make sure that you keep your team involved in that. Actually bring them into those forums, give them some items to talk about, and make sure they're sharing some of their successes with each other. You want to create some unity and inspiration for your team when you're in the office, because it really fills up their morale bucket. That then gives them that completion, so that when they are working remotely from home, it's going to get them through to the next day that they're all in the office together.
Okay, 6 more to go. Right, so here we go. Thank you, Tony, for your comment, by the way. Yes, it is hard to keep up, but it is really interesting. Keep up, guys. Here you go. All right, so I wanted to share with you that there really is absolutely a difference between someone who you recruit to work from home versus the people that we've thrown home, right? We've forced them to go home. We recruited them and set them up for success to work in the office, right? And we threw them home. So nobody is going to work exactly the same at home as what they did in the office where you set them up for success. So typically, when you recruit specifically for someone at home, you do get a higher occupancy, you do get lower absenteeism. And some of our clients have actually seen that develop with some of their staff members. And wow, maybe they are better off working from home. But in the main, what we've done is we've recruited people who can work in the office, and they're now at home. And their whole environment is different. So there's a lot of differences between those two. Please do not expect that your people you recruited to work in an office and you've thrown them home, and when they are at home, that they're going to work as productively as what you would do if you actually recruited to work there. It's a really different world. Okay?
So, yours. Okay, so we're going to go through the next 3 really quickly because it's all about leadership lessons. So, the first one is work from home works. So we've set all of our people up for success. We've made sure that their calls are all connected. They've got no internet dropouts. They know exactly what to do and how to handle all of these new inquiries that they've got. But what about our team leaders who are actually monitoring and supporting and leading them? So I ask you, when was the last time that you as a leader refreshed your leadership skills? On screen are the 5 key leadership aspects that any successful leader needs to have in order to be a successful leader and to run smoothly with your team. So come and chat to us if you find that you've got any deficiencies in that. Tip number 17 is that leaders need to be coaching right now more than ever. So like it or not, our teams are actually doing work that is very different to the type of work that they were doing 7 months ago. Okay, it can be something as small as the inquiry types have changed, the call volume's gone up, the metrics are slightly different, as in the metrics are the same, but the numbers are different. Some of our conversations with our customers are very different. Our customers are stressed. They are worried. They are angry. They are frustrated. They're concerned. And so that in turn means that our phone agents are actually doing very different work to what they were doing earlier. They need to have feedback and coaching on that. And tip number 18 is that we have all found over the entire 8 months that we've been doing this for very different forums as well as Auscontact, that modular training works. It works because it's micro, it's bite-sized, and it focuses on foundational training, and then layer by layer by layer, it builds up competency. And you do that week on week on week. You partner that with following up, coaching, feedback, and reinforcing activities, and that continual weekly addition layers in that competency, and you'll see a much better uptake of learning transfer with your people. You'll see a much better reinforcement happening in your world, in your workplace, and also it brings in the leaders in on the activity as well. Because remember, your team leaders are your most influential people in that contact centre.
And in fact, Trisha's been doing quite a lot of trainings that we all have, but Trisha's done so much that we've actually got clients that are now preferring, and so are we, preferring these 1 hour bite-sized chunks, come back in a week, do the next module, come back in a week, and we're keeping them honest during that week, and they're getting an opportunity to practice. So it really is delivering a lot of difference. There's some customer impacts as well we see that is quite different within our work, within the environment. Our customers are at home, they're more stressed as well. They've got a little bit more time. There's differences, obviously, as some states are moving out of COVID restrictions and restrictions from working from home, but there's still some of this happening. But we are therefore finding that we've got your core quality tool or your conversations framework, whatever you like to call it, does actually need some tweaking. It needs some changes. We need more acknowledgement of the customer situation at the beginning of the call because our customers expect that. Are we getting a higher percentage of complex inquiries because our customers are actually staying online now to do the simple inquiries? So your AH team actually has changed upwards as an organisation as well. So that's number 19. If you look at number 20, this is yours, Kylie.
This one I absolutely love, and if you can please take a photo of this or write it down, okay? This is another great model that all leaders should be using, but they should also be using it with their teams as well. It's a model called MENS, okay? And every single workshop we talked about this in. The first one is meditation, and meditation doesn't necessarily mean meditating. It could be drawing, it could be art, it could be reading, whatever it might be, but how are you really clearing your mind? How are you allowing your mind to have some of that mindfulness? The second one is exercise, okay? And exercise is about moving your body. How are you moving your body? The next one is N, and N stands for nutrition, okay, and that is how are you fueling your body. If there's one thing that everyone has had closer to them, it's been the fridge, okay? So making sure that you've got that great nutrition as well. And then finally, S is for sleep. And MENS is all about making sure that you're looking after your own well-being because, again, if you don't have your own oxygen mask on, how do you help others? So use it for you, but also use it for your team as well when they're struggling.
So talking about the oxygen mask?
Talking about the oxygen mask, okay, I have to finish my slide on that because I cannot stress the importance of making sure that you are looking after yourself and your team are also looking after themselves as well. So remember to fit your own oxygen mask and make sure you use that MENS model to make sure you've got that real health and well-being.
Thank you. I think, look, from our team to you, that was really, really fast. We know that, we recognise that. But look, if you want to explore any of those tools or any of those things further, or your team leaders want some reconfirmation on it, then there is an Auscontact Virtual Coffee Workshop Series 4 coming up in November. So that should come out in the next day or two, please, Jess. And look, or talk to us directly. We're doing quite a bit about leadership and coaching and agent training at the moment. Or join me for a coffee chat at any time and talk about your changing performance, as Malcolm and others have done. We're always happy to throw around ideas. But thank you for supporting your leaders to come to the Virtual Coffee Workshops. We've been absolutely honoured to actually be there for you during these months, and we actually feel like we've been part of so many organisations with Auscontact that it's been an absolute blessing and a thrill to be part of those teams. So from the BBB team, Team BBB, we wish you all the best today. I hope you got all these 20 down, otherwise we won't run any tests, so it's fine. But remember, fit your own oxygen mask first, look after yourselves, and we're with you all the way. Thank you a lot. Thanks, Fiona.
Thanks, Team BBB. I've got my oxygen mask on, although I do take it off to have an occasional coffee.